Hi everyone, I'm Camille Penn, I'm the director of Futur en Seine. I'm thrilled to launch the festival with you at this opening conference. During the next 3 days, you will have the chance to discover and test more than 150 digital innovations and get a glimpse of the future. We expect 25,000 visitors, professionals from the tech sector, but also tech lovers, students, kids and their teachers. We aim at creating the most meaningful encounters between top-notch innovators and the public with one goal in mind, to design collectively the world that we want to live in. The theme of this year's edition is intelligences. Discussing with Eric Scherer, who is director of the Future Media at France TV, but also our curatorial advisor for Futur en Seine, and with Hélène Alain, who is the program manager, we agreed that we wanted to put AI, artificial intelligence, at the center of this year's program. We invited 125 innovators, experts, including 55% of women, and I insist on this number. We are very proud of having a half of women speakers in our programmation, including these exceptional women, to discuss the opportunities and threats raised by AI. Oops. Sorry. The main topic, we believe, is how intelligences, emotional intelligence, creative intelligence, I mean human intelligence, will cohabitate with the intelligence of the machine. There is no need to fear AI, but there is certainly a need to discuss and to educate on what is at stake with this technical revolution. The title of this opening conference is What is the Future? WTF. It sounds like a manifesto. The question we are asking is what role technology can play in a world in crisis. I'm referring to Brexit, to Trump, to the refugees crisis. And so we invited this exceptional woman who are all committed to social good, human rights, internet freedom and education to answer this question. I hope you will enjoy the conference and I hope you will enjoy the whole festival. And I will now leave you with Pierre Aski, who is leading the discussion. And Pierre Aski is co-founder of the pure player media Rue 89, and I really thank him for accepting to lead the debate.
Thank you. Thank you and welcome to this first panel of Futur en Seine and the first panel of the day. And the title, as was just said, is WTF, What's the Future? And it's obviously a very hard question to answer these days, where we are split between the anxieties of the flow of news. You know, we are split between the news about terrorism, about climate change, with the US president telling us that he doesn't care about it. And on the other side, we have the promise of technology, we have the promises of a better world. And how to reconcile those two opposed feelings is very difficult. I'm not sure we'll have all the answers this morning, but we definitely have a great panel to try to address the questions. And let me first introduce them to you. So next to me is Marietje Schaak. She's a member of the European Parliament from the Netherlands, from the Progressive Party D66, is that right? And also a founder of the European Parliament Intergroup on the Digital Agenda for Europe, which is a key issue, and I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to talk about it. Next is Nathalie Loiseau. Nathalie Loiseau is the director of École Nationale d'Administration, ENA, a well-known school in France, obviously. Nathalie is not an énarque, which is quite an exception, and was a former diplomat for a long time, has been posted in several countries, and a graduate from Sciences Po and from Langzhou in Chinese, which is dear to my heart. Next is Amira Yahaoui, who comes from Tunisia, who was a blogger and human rights activist at the time that preceded the revolution in 2011. Her Twitter account is still Mira404, and 404 was the error page that was produced by the censorship when you could not access a website. So, and since the revolution, she has created Al-Bawsala, an observatory of political transparency in Tunisia, and you know, we are also in the same subject of how to make good use of the digital era in the work for democracy. And next to her is Axel Tessandier, who is a well-known digital entrepreneur who has lived in Berlin, London, and spent many years in the Silicon Valley before returning to France, and found herself in recent months at the heart of the campaign of Emmanuel Macron. And so she'll tell us maybe what we can expect in that respect. A last note, as was pointed out, we have an all-women panel. I signed a few months ago a manifesto called Never Without Her, Jamais Sans Elle, which was a pledge never to take part in a panel without a woman. So today we have more than fulfilled this pledge, and maybe we should start thinking about starting a new manifesto, Never Without Him, because the times, they are changing, as our Nobel Prize would have said. So let's start maybe with you, Axel, because you're often described as a tech evangelist that in the media, and we are in the heart of this contradiction between the promises of technology and the anxieties of the real world. How do you reconcile the two, and how do tech people look at this dichotomy?
Yeah, it's just, I think, I don't know if I'm a tech evangelist, but I think technology doesn't have any agenda. You know what I mean? We give as technology will be bad, as it will be a person. I think technology is very neutral. It really depends what we do with it. And it really depends what kind of goal we have with technology. That's why you can produce with technology a lot of good. You can start revolution, democratic revolution, and you can start, I mean, we see that every day on Twitter. We see that every day in this world we live in. So me as a millennial, but not even, it's not even a generational thing. I grew up, my generation grew up with these new technologies, this new environment, and I was convinced, because it changed my life, because it allowed me to connect with a lot of people from, I don't know, like for political movement or even on different subjects. For me, it was very powerful. And so it really depends what we do with this power. And so me as a citizen, I feel my responsibility is to use it for good, because when you have such a power, technology changed my life from, I went to Berlin because of technology to work on a project, the digital revolution for the digital generation, and how we're going to work like that. The Silicon Valley changed my life, so I know the power of technology, but after 5 years in the Silicon Valley, I'm pretty firm, maybe you know the theory of solutionism, that is that technology can change everything by itself, and it's absolutely false. It's really a geek heresy. I think it's our human responsibility to take care of what we want to do with that.
So you agree with Evgeny Morozov, who said, if you have a problem, press enter. You know, this criticism of the solutionism.
Yeah, I don't. I know he's really loved in France, you know, because we love to bash the Silicon Valley and what kind of cliché we can have about the American society. But I find what he said very interesting. It's, you know, it's when I arrived in the Silicon Valley, I had my wow moment during 2 years. I was everything was so amazing, awesome. You had people at every corner of the street and every company that was explaining to you, with this software, I can do this, I can change the world, I have this power. So it's really empowering, and it's very, very exciting. And then you realize, what is the kind of society you create when you give so much power to one private company, or when you give so much power to one person, because a company is just, it's not a building, it's a person. So, you know, when I see Mark Zuckerberg that is starting kind of American tour, I don't know if I think he's thinking about becoming the next president. That's raised question. So his talks are really inspiring, connecting the world. But it's a lot of power in the hand of one man, you know, especially with the company he has.
We'll talk about that, I'm sure. Thank you. Nathalie, as I said, you are the director of ENA, and a few years ago, people were talking about suppressing ENA, that it was not the best format to prepare for the future in the new digital era. And today we see that in the new government landscape, ENA is stronger than ever, or more present than ever, let's say, in the curriculum of many top people. Is ENA the best place to deal with an innovative society in the digital era?
Well, actually, we have no choice. We have to deal with new society, new challenges, like every single university in France or elsewhere in the world. What is new in ENA is that we have stopped our splendid isolation as we used to practice it for some decades. And now we work with French and foreign universities, or what we call Grande École, because we have this very special system in France, as different as possible from what we are, to try to prepare our students for a future we know very little about. We have never had so few clues about the future we are going to live in. For instance, I don't know for what professions I'm preparing my students. The only certainty I have is that they will be completely different from what I have practiced myself. So the idea that education is transmitting knowledge from older people to younger people is not relevant anymore. We have to prepare them to adapt to a new society. So of course, digital revolution is a key part of the curriculum right now. It's approximately 1/3 of what we are teaching our students. That is to say, understanding the basics, being, I would say, digital literates. More than half of my students on a voluntary basis learn to code right now. They have asked for it, we have proposed it, and more than half of each class learns to code. Second is understanding what opportunities digital brings to public administration in terms of open government, in terms of relations between the citizens and the administration, how to make consultation, how to decide, for instance, what is done in Paris with part of the budget that is voted by the citizens online. All these opportunities that you have to relate differently with the citizens when you are in the public administration. We also work on the ecosystem. How do you promote the new economy? French tech is a success, but we cannot just rely on French tech. We know that many people prefer to go to the Silicon Valley for obvious reasons, and we have to think about it and understand it fully. And of course, how do we regulate this digital revolution? How do we protect personal data? How do we deal with cybersecurity? But my neighbor knows much better the topic than I do. And what is our role? As you said, the question is not is technology good or bad, but what do we want to do with it? What is our purpose? What kind of society do we want to live in? So it's a huge part of what we are doing today. We are learning by doing, because changing this curriculum to that extent means that we experiment every day. And students know it. I keep on telling them, I don't know whether next week's lessons are going to be relevant. We will try. If you like it, we'll do more. If you don't like it, we'll change it. And I hope that they learn this sort of mindset. Experiment, try, take risks, and try to better what you're doing by doing it, not just theoretically. So it's very exciting. We work, we work with entities like École 42 or Epitech, We work with designers' schools as well, because now public policy is not something that you draft within a small office of very intelligent people. You draft it with the citizens, starting from bottom up, and designers have a lot to learn to teach us about it. So this is what we're trying to do.
Thank you. Maridia, I mentioned in the introduction that you founded this intergroup in the European Parliament on the digital agenda. Is Europe ready to take up the challenge of building a digital world? At the moment we see obviously American multinational companies dominating the world market, being challenged only by Chinese companies, and Europe being in danger of being secondary to those two worlds. What can be done about it, and is Europe ready to take up that challenge?
First of all, thank you so much for including me. I think it's a great pleasure to discuss what the future with you all here in France, especially after such a interesting and uplifting election result that I think brought back a lot of trust in politics for a lot of people. At least it resonates in Europe. And
your election was not bad either.
That's right. So we have to hold each other as progressives in Europe and find an optimistic agenda for the future. I think that that's the real lesson, that it can work and it must work. And that's the same, I would say, for Europe. I mean, sure, a lot of big companies are in Silicon Valley, but is big always better? I think we're doing a real rethink about the enormous power of some of these, especially social media companies, but also other companies that have massive impact on hundreds of millions, if not billions, of citizens around the world. And as a representative that's in public office and elected, of course, my primary interest is to look at where the public interest lies and how we can safeguard that. So I believe that the big challenge for Europe is to pave the way to show how the rule of law can maintain its meaning, its applicability in a hyper-connected world, safeguarding non-discrimination, fair competition, access to information, freedom of expression, and security also when there is no longer a monopoly that the state had once over security means and the military, for example, when we look at the cyber domain. So I think the challenges are enormous, but Europe has reason to be optimistic. I think we see that the historic awareness, really the engrainment of values and principles in much of the DNA of Europe, because of the painful history lessons that we've learned, gives us a sensitivity collectively, despite all the diversity, to build in values such as the right to privacy, data protection, but also in areas like net neutrality in our laws, where it's not only the survival of the fittest or the fastest or the richest, but that it's really a balancing act between innovation and the public interest. And of course, I think we need to do a lot more in Europe to remove existing barriers that hinder very exciting startups, of which we have many, to scale, to grow in an ecosystem where they have access to capital, access to the right people that they want to hire, and where, for example, differences in copyright laws, consumer protection, regulations between countries are still too much of a hindrance in Europe to go from, let's say, a streaming company in Finland to reach an audience in Spain. And so we have a lot of work to do, but I would also caution against idealizing the sort of libertarian big tech companies in Silicon Valley too much. Let's cherish what we have and do what we must, but not forget the public interest. Technology does not automatically lead to an improvement of the quality of life of people. And I think there's been a bit of well, maybe wishful thinking or utopian excitement about so much of the technological changes. But I think what we know now is that nothing is automatic. And I think that technology and some of these new tools often merely create extensions of power structures. And we have to really think about the values, the governance models that we are seeking, that we are aspiring to, and how they can also be baked in, designed in, coded in to the systems that we develop. Because what is the fastest, what is the most efficient, what is the most profitable is not always the best for democracy, for people, and for the public interest.
Thank you. That's a very important point that I found in all three first remarks. Amira, you are one of the people who tried to use technology for good in the wake of the Tunisian revolution. You tried to introduce transparency through digital tools during the Constitutional Assembly in Tunisia. What's your assessment after all these years in a country like Tunisia that still is trying to build up its institutions, its democracy, also solve huge social and economic problems?
As a Tunisian, I'm very happy to be in Paris without Marine Le Pen, so congratulations to all of you here. So good to be here. You know, the Tunisian revolution, to use a tech word, is the first human augmented revolution, which after the revolution, many people were calling the Tunisian revolution as a cyber revolution, as a tech revolution, but it was not totally cyber. It was not totally tech, but it was helped with internet and social media to make it bigger and maybe more impactful and quicker, maybe. And so for that, it's very interesting to look at the example of Tunisia as the use of technology for good and the pairing between human and technology to make humans more efficient and more impactful. And this is, I think, a very good example. You know, whenever we talk about internet and democracy, I am always fearing that line that many here in this part of the world, the developed world, the democratic world, is now thinking about, which is regulation. I've been here in Paris a few months ago discussing this at UNESCO, and I was with many of the top policy people in Europe who are discussing what should we do against fake news, for example. And this is a very long discussion. And I heard one of them telling us that there is a country in Europe where they are going to pass a law to fine whoever publishes a fake news. I think it was like $7,000 for a newspaper that would publish fake news. And this is actually a very interesting debate, as we know. I mean, and Emmanuel Macron talked about Sputnik and Russia Today and these propaganda websites, etc. And so I wished I was from this part of the world, because it's interesting to talk about how do we clean internet. But at the same time, for me, what was extremely worrying is to see and to see it very clearly, the impact of whatever this kind of regulation in Europe can impact in dictatorships. Not Tunisia, since Tunisia is the only democracy in the Arab world, but in many, many countries in Africa, in Asia, and in America, and also in Europe, I mean in the world. So whenever we think about internet and whenever we think about technology, we think about it from our perspective, and especially the developed perspective. It is good for us to, for example, regulate internet because we're sick of fake news and people are grown up enough and we know that we will not shut up media because of that. And at the same time, if imagine France passes this kind of law, I can assure you that most of the Francophone countries that live under dictatorship would pass the same law using the French example and end up censoring internet and censoring media, saying that this is fake news. If you publish anything about the dictator saying he's a dictator, it is fake news. And so, therefore, let's take the example of this democratic country and do the same. So I am today very interested to, when I hear and listen to the debate about the use of technology here, not in France, but in the developed world, and to see its impact on the rest of the world. The second thing I wanted to talk about is technology good? You know, I mean, and it can be, and I think actually that technology today is enabling one of the most interesting and important philosophical questions to mankind, which is, are we here to work? What is the purpose of life? So whenever we talk about jobs, whenever we talk about...
You have 1 minute to answer that question.
Yeah, I can. No, I need an AI for that. Whenever we talk about, and I think you, Natalie, brought this, we talk about the impact of technology on jobs. And we're really fearing these millions of jobs that will be lost, maybe because of technology, AI, deep learning, name it, technology. And it's interesting because we don't ask ourselves whether or not we're here to work, or should we use this technology to actually stop working and enjoy life. And of course, I mean, for some people, for others, no. And in France, you had an extremely interesting debate during the campaign, which is the universal income. And I was very surprised not to see the link between universal income and technology, as actually both topics were on top of topics during the campaign. So will technology actually enable countries to get enough income to be able to let people live instead of work and pay for that? Are we losing jobs or are we losing income? Does technology make you lose income or just work? And so waste of time, maybe, for many people. So I think there are today very interesting topics that we can discuss here that technology is enabling. And these topics are also about why are we here for and what is the future for real.
Axel, yes, I think Amira raises a very interesting point. You were involved in the election campaign, and
we were the candidate of work, so.
and your candidate didn't pick up the universal.
I just want to come back 1 minute on when you asked the question. Do you think Lena will be prepared for the next technological revolution? I think it's a question for any school in France. Any educational system will have to ask this question before we are 20 or 25. It's Pierre Rabhi that says something I really love. He always say we always ask ourselves what kind of planet we'll give to our children, but what kind of children we'll give to our planet. So I think when you don't know, yeah, I love this sentence because we never think like, what kind of citizen you will educate, because when you don't know what will be the job in 5 or 10 years, what do you transmit? Yeah, it's very hard. So do you have to, I don't know, learn resilience, curiosity, empathy, all these kind of things you never hear in France. Way more in your country, I have to say. In France, you don't talk so much about this kind of learning, and I think it will be key. No, it's not auto-bashing at all. But it's not. No, sorry, I just did the campaign about our country is awesome. But I know where our weakness, but it's not only a French problem. It's, do you know what is the TED Talk, the most watched since the history of TED? It's how school killed creativity. So it's absolutely not French bashing. It's really a question we have to ask ourselves. I wanted also to come back to the European, like to be proud to be in Europe. Big is not always the best. I totally agree. It's funny because you have this vision from the US that Europe is crazy about regulation, like we are regulation freak.
They sometimes accuse us of being French.
And so they have this image like, oh yeah, but you know, we have the right to have a different vision about technology, to have a different vision about what we can do with our data, without security, with the right to be forgotten, it's okay. So I think, you know, we can offer another vision for the future than the Silicon Valley. And actually, I think we have to do it. And Europe, I think for me, is a good scale. Like when I think about technology in France and startup, we have to think about European tech. We did the French tech. When do we do the European tech? When do you do, because the thing I learned when I was in the Silicon Valley and when I was in Berlin, in London, it's really what made me very creative and innovative was collaboration and diversity. Working with people not my age, not my background, not my culture. We have something that the US doesn't have. We have this diversity, and at the same time, we have a common history. This is so strong. So for me, the next step will really be to build the European tech. It will make us strong. Like, if you have one co-founder, try to find a co-founder for another country. I hope, for instance, Station F with Xavier, bring European startup in this place. It's really key, it's really important. And the last point I wanted to talk is really social activism. Is it really different? And I love when you say it was a human action amplified by the power we have. And I was in South by Southwest 2 years ago, and it was really about social activism in the age of Snowden. And all of them think, you know, it can start like this, and it can die like this. This is exactly the same. It's still about the human factor. It's still about going to the street. It's still about organize. The technology help us, but it can occupy Wall Street died pretty quickly, actually. So, and on work, it's another topic.
You want to say something? Yes.
No, I wanted to come back to what you said about Tech Europe and then also about the global impact. So on the one hand, I think we should not look for one centralized hub. I mean, technology is all about decentralization. And then so often I hear people dreaming of a European Silicon Valley. Why? We have hubs in so many cities, and we should foster more. I mean, you know, we should always aspire to do better. But I think what's happening in Berlin, in Barcelona, in Amsterdam, in other cities is actually very, very exciting, and it already brings together Europeans. We should just be careful that we don't push out talent, because there's a real risk that in the sort of very, very sensitive discussion about migration, our ability to attract the best global talent fast and with competitive contracts is also being killed along with the building of walls and the pushing out of refugees. Secondly, to Amira's point, I think we often forget what our impact is in our open societies, in our democracies elsewhere in the world. And with regard to the Arab uprisings, because that's actually the source of why I ever became so involved with technology, we tend to think from our own perspective. Let me give 2 examples. One is the lawful intercept technology. It's a technology that allows the police, for example, law enforcement, to access the computer of suspected criminals, suspected terrorists. If it's lawful, we think, by and large in Europe, that there's judicial oversight and there's a framework. But if you export lawful intercept technologies to a country where the rule of law does not exist, the meaning and the context changes drastically. And even though I agree that it was a human revolution with a lot of courage and a lot of sacrifice, that had a technological component, don't forget that the dictatorships also have very, very ambitiously strengthened their hands with the help of technology, and they're often made in Europe. So one of the things that I'm working on in the European Parliament is actually to be much more critical of the exports of some of the commercially available surveillance, intrusion, exfiltration systems that can not only be bought by police, law enforcement, military police, secret police of dictatorships, but also by criminal organizations and terror groups. You will be shocked if you see the ease with which these systems that are becoming faster, cheaper, and smaller every day are commercially sold without much restriction. So not only do we have to look at enabling creativity, innovation, growth, new ways to think about jobs and innovation and education, but also we have to take our responsibility. And I think that the values discussion, the ethics discussion, the philosophical discussion risks to be overshadowed by the hype and the excitement of what could be possible by technology.
Well, I'd like to just, to come back to Amira's other point. which was about jobs. Artificial intelligence is at the heart of this year's Futur en Scène. For many people, it means job destruction. Yes. It's a nightmare that some people have about it, which is not totally unbased. I mean, some studies do say so. So how do, and I'm turning to Axel first, do someone like Emmanuel Macron, who involve that in a campaign? What do you say about that if you don't agree with the universal wage?
The debate was so interesting because actually we had a debate based on a new idea, was the universal income, pretty new in France, very common in the Silicon Valley. Libertarians are crazy about this idea. It's not a left or right idea, actually. The first time I heard about it was in the center of Silicon Valley because, I think maybe it was Larry Page, the co-founder of Google, saying maybe 32 hours a week will be enough, So it was like not even 35, 32 hours from the founder of Google. So it's really, really a debate to have. About the universal income, my fear about that, it's supposed to create a more equal society because you will not be left behind if you don't have a job for the future. But actually, I think it's Dr. Alexandre, I don't know if you know, the founder of Doctissimo, that said he was at an audition at the Senate. He says something very strong. He said, it's Metropolis in 20 years because you will always have the one that have the skills and the asset for this century. And the one that don't have, okay, it's your income. And so he said, it's a different equality, but it's still an inequality, but it's still an inequality. So for me, it's not the solution. And our belief during the campaign, as you know, was that work is not disappearing, it's just a different one. And so it's transforming, and you need skill like repetitive tasks probably will disappear, but even software engineer are not protected. Maybe like in 5 or 10 years, you will not need, because now they are super trendy, but maybe in 5 or 10 years, you don't need a man or a woman to code. So maybe like in 5 or 10 years, coding will not be the new trend to do. So for us, it's about train people for the new job and what kind of skill you will need. Like, you have Richard Florida, maybe that that is only really writing, it's so interesting, about the creative class and cities. So we see that many of the European population and many population went to cities. And what kind of creative class, what kind of creative job? Does it mean you have to be a creative to have a job like something a computer cannot do easily? And what does it mean to be a creative? It's about intuition, vulnerability. So what kind is vulnerability the best asset you can have, because a computer doesn't really know what is a vulnerability. So all of this is very interesting.
Nathalie and then Amira.
Well, so many things. Maybe I will react to just the end of what you said, Axel. What are the skills which are the most important right now? And we are asking ourselves these kind of questions in NR and elsewhere. What is intelligence? It's about the topic that we are supposed to discuss. What is intelligence when knowledge is available for free everywhere at any time? So people who have a lot of knowledge might not be the one that we are looking for. So we all say we have to have adaptable people, creative people. I think that we sort of mentioned it without focusing on it. We have to have people who have collective intelligence, who can work with very different people, who are not trained and used to live and work in silos, but can reach out to different people and build new projects. This is something that we have tried to do by selecting our students and by working with them throughout their curriculum. We have collective entrance exams. We have collective tests during the whole curriculum. We want to see what they can create. We want to see whether they can test new ideas. We want to make sure that they stand ready to experiment, stand ready to fail, something that our school system hates. Learning people that you learn more by failing than by successing all the time. Of course, it's like recreating the basis of the values they've been educated with. But I think it's key right now. And about the question of jobs and what are we going to do, because yes, Schumpeter told us that it has to start by destroying jobs and that there is a brilliant future afterwards, but we don't know much about it. We are trying to boost and enhance research by putting together people who didn't used to know each other or respect each other for quite a long time. That is to say, people from the private sector, engineers, social research scholars, sociologists, psychologists, philosophers, and practitioners from the public administration. We are starting it right now. We want to be one of the many places, I hope, where these kind of questions are going to be asked and where there is going to be a collective debate. Some people have already started. Bernard Stiegler started in Plaine Saint-Denis, and I think his work is extremely relevant to try to know what are we going to do with these jobs disappearing, with part of the population which doesn't have access to internet or is not familiar with internet. It's 15% of French population, whether people are too poor or too poorly educated or too old to feel comfortable with internet. And all the future that we are talking about is something that is far, far away from 15% of our population.
Marietje, is that a French debate, or do you have the same debate in the Netherlands?
Oh no, the future of jobs is a big topic, and I think it's absolutely necessary to tie it to technological developments. We've had a lot of hot political debate around trade, also in this country. A lot of people going into the streets demonstrating against trade agreements because they fear that the jobs and the principles would be removed through that. But I think as a result, there has not been as much focus on the impact of technology on jobs. In our political party, we are proposing experiments with universal basic income to see how it goes. And I think the best way to deal with the rapid technological change is to actually face it head on, but without being naive. I mean, I would caution against simply wondering what the technology will bring and then preparing people. I would also really hope that concepts of constitutional law, of principles of open societies are really also going to be a part of preparing people for the future. Because I think one of the broader risks, and I mean we can look at it in terms of intelligence. I also like to look at it in terms of governance, norm setting. The risk that we have is that governments, those who are accountable to the public, at least in democracies, who have a responsibility to uphold the constitution, are less and less able to actually set norms and offer the kinds of safeguards that we do still promise to people as governments and as lawmakers. Because the jurisdiction, so the impact that we have with our laws on our territory, is no longer the only place where relevant change happens, because we are so connected, because private companies at the other end of the world can bring people into their terms of use that have a deep impact on speech, on access to information, on discrimination. There's a big discussion now, and I think it was good that Amira mentioned it as well, about fake news. And one of the often heard comments is, we do not want a ministry of truth. And of course, nobody does. I mean, who wants a ministry of truth? It's terrifying. But essentially, is Mark Zuckerberg not the minister of truth to some extent already? Is that acceptable? Do we want algorithms to maximize profit to determine what we see? Is it appropriate that Facebook takes down breastfeeding mothers because they think it is too explicit? Or, for that matter, a Roman statue of Neptune in Rome because it's pornographic? Or the Napalm Girl iconic photo because it is nudity? I mean, of course, these are incidents, and we may think it is only a few crazy examples, but let us think deeply about who we would like to set the norms for the future. Where is accountability? Where is the rule of law of the future? That is the question that keeps me up at night. I don't have all the answers, but I encourage you to think about those questions as much as the future of jobs or the future of education.
Thank you. These are indeed very important issues. We have a few minutes for questions from the floor. You have 4 exceptional speakers from very different perspectives, and it's an opportunity to ask a few questions. Anyone volunteer? Come on. There are microphones if you have any questions.
Merci beaucoup.
Nobody?
We're very boring.
You can ask the question in French if needed. You have a question? Okay. Oh, okay, no. Wait.
Hello, thank you for all your interventions. To go deeply in what Amira said, I think the question isn't about if we need to still work today, but what kind of work do we want to do in the future? Because work is necessary. It's a kind of improving the knowledge ever. So if we stop working because of technology giving us all we want, we are going, like Laurent Alexandre said, in 2100, like Matrix, because entertainment, and we have way too much entertainment today, is like opium, and less educated people like opium. So the problem today is what kind of facilities do we take for education, for good education for the masses, because very few people are very well educated and prepared for that future with that technology. So what kind of education can we offer to the future generations?
Nathalie, oh, you want to take it? Okay, and then maybe Nathalie has.
You know, when I talk about work, I'm not talking about passion. I'm talking about making a living because you need to eat, and to do something shitty and boring just to get that. And when I talk about life, it can include what we call work, but having a purpose, spending time doing something you love, I won't call it work. I would love to, I work, but I don't call it work. I love it, so this is not it. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the majority of people who are sick of what they are doing. And I think that can be interesting. Can I just comment on my friends here on 2 things? The first one is about the discussion. Whenever we discuss technology, we're discussing should we resist it, and what should we do with it? And I think first of all, or should we block it, or should we control it? And I think that we're wasting too much time on that, and we should be smart and pick our battles. The world is transforming. Technology is going to be everywhere and everything. And we need to pick our battles. While we don't spend enough time, here we're spending a lot of time on this, but we don't spend generally enough time on discussing how can we use technology for good. And in that sense, if you look at the transformational things that happen through technology, you will see that the bad things went way faster than the good ones. So, for example, today it is totally normal and absolutely acceptable to push a button just to send a drone over a school in Yemen, for example. That is totally understandable that the use of technology allows to be seated in Austin, Texas, push a button and send a drone. While the discussions have been for 10 years and still until today impossible to make every one of us vote online and vote on regular basis on decisions that are made by politicians. And we think that, yes, you need to take your Sunday off and go and put the paper in a basket, and then someone needs to write down with a piece of pen, and therefore we can do it for everything. You cannot vote for everything, because that is completely impossible to handle. And so politicians keeping again and forever a power that is not shared, while technology allows it totally. It is completely possible, at least in Europe and in North America, to make everyone vote on a regular basis, and like Switzerland does actually, or other countries. So what is I think interesting to look at is how come we are so weak when it comes to the use of technology for good. How come the use of technology for good has been most of the time used in social movement and maybe even revolutionary movements, so opposition movement, and not to build or the big events that technology allowed for the past 20 years, were revolutions, social uprising, etc. But not just like a healthy and cool discussion to make something good, like a law or something. So I am very puzzled by the fact that the good people are picking the wrong battles, and I think. And I heard today there are two other tech events, and I'm sure the discussions will be how can we make more profit, which is not a bad thing, and will not be how can we make more impact or improve the daily life of citizens and why we're here for.
Thank you.
On that, so first on the drone, I think it's a question of direct democracy, where you don't. You have the representative democracy, where I give power to the people that represent me, and I agree with that. So I don't want to vote on everything, but to allow that to happen for me and to treat them, I need a real representation. So for me, that's my battle right now. That's the battle for Sunday, for the next Sunday and the vote. That's really because I think we are sick of that. We don't treat them because they are not us. So it's more about that. I don't want to vote every day. If I give power, you have a job, you have a life. Not everybody wants to think about politics every day, to be honest. But for a healthy democracy, you need trust. And also on impact technology and tech for good, we can talk about it. But I'm also surprised to see that 20, 25 years old young students are more about like creating an app for something that is an app. When you have so many big challenges like, I don't know, climate change, it's also a personal responsibility. And again, we come on education, and we come on, it's not because we talk about it that we have more of it. I want to see people that, gosh, this is a huge challenge. I am the society, I can do something about it. So, it's not only about talking about it, it's our responsibility. If you want to put, I don't know, all your life during 2 years on something for, I don't know, not a big challenge from my point of view, or, I don't know, about climate change, so self-education, solving this kind of problem.
Nathalie?
Maybe I will come back to your idea of why don't we vote online? It would be so easier, and maybe there would be more voters, especially among the young generation. Just to get back to the current parliamentary election in France, it was considered that French people living abroad would vote online. And then it was cancelled. Not because the previous government was archaic or not willing to go on the right direction. On the contrary, just because there was a huge anxiety that this election might be hacked. And we know for certain that foreign key players show interest in our democratic elections. So, yes, sure, that would be fantastic if we had a system that was so well protected that we could vote online and be certain that there is no external intervention.
Blockchain.
It will come. But we need a lot of money, and public spending is not very popular at the time.
We'll pay in bitcoins.
I don't know. Answering about education, well, it could last 2 hours, but we don't have 2 hours to talk about it, I know. I might surprise you. I live with students all the time. I also have 4 kids, so I'm in this thought about education. What do they want? What do they need? First, and maybe to react to what you just said, young generation is not that much about creating a new app. In private management schools, in engineer schools, in my school, they are very much about NGOs, social commitment. What can we do to help? Can I go to Laos to help build a school? My students, every week, they participate in an NGO. Whatever they want, the only condition is that it helps very vulnerable populations. And they do it enthusiastically. They also learn to code, but they want to have this social citizen commitment. But my other answer about what should we teach the young generation might surprise you, but it's not at all about tech. It's about humanities. I think there's a huge gap. We have not gotten poorer in terms of economic values. We have got poorer in terms of cultural values. I had a very shocking experience a few weeks ago. I was discussing with students who are studying to prepare for École Normale Supérieure. And they were studying in Lycée Louis-le-Grand, so the crème de la crème of the preparatory classes in Paris. They had voted for the far left for the first part of the presidential election, and they were considering voting for the far right for the second part of the presidential election. And I have to confess that I was sick when I heard that from people who were normally well educated. So I decided I would spend the whole evening and maybe the whole night. I tried to convince them of what they were about to do. I reached their understanding when I taught them about our history and about a French public character whose name is Jacques Doriot. And I told them, well, we can start from the far left and go to the far right and see what it means. They knew nothing about him. And they were in Louis-le-Grand preparing for Normale Supérieure. I was amazed, I was shocked, and I see even my students, they want more classes about history. My students all have a master's degree when they enter ENA, and they ask about history, they ask about cultural interactions, they ask about religions, they ask about humanities.
It's funny because, you know, when I remember when Steve Jobs launched the iPhone and he had something behind him. He said, you know, we are the most innovative company in the world, not because we are a technological company, but because we are at the intersection of liberal art and technology. And at this intersection, you have innovation. And when he say liberal art and technology and the intersection, I could not I had to think about my country. When I think of that, France, we really have a huge asset, because if we have the right culture about not being afraid of failure and taking risk and everything, what our country has a huge cultural background, artistic background, and we have the technological skills. So when he said that, I thought, whoa, the future could be actually in my country, not really in the middle of the Silicon Valley.
We have time for one short question. Microphone, please. There's someone over there.
Thank you. I will go back to the philosophical question, especially on artificial intelligence. When you take artificial intelligence and you apply it to business, most of the time you try to optimize something. It could be safety, it could be profit, anything. If we take one step back and apply it to humankind, the question I have for you is, the 5 of you, just one word, what function are we trying to optimize for humankind?
Good. You want
trust.
Once again, collective intelligence.
Pass. Values, maybe?
Trust and kindness.
Unfortunately, we have to stop it there. I'll end up with a